So, Rosemary, you grew up in Dunedin.
Yes.
When do you first remember music in your life?
Well, the story goes from my parents that at the age of 4 I went to kindergarten and I saw a piano and heard a piano for the first time. And from then on I kept telling them I wanted a kindy piano. So
A kindy piano, yes.
I wanted a kindy piano. So when I was 5, they bought a piano for the family, and I was allowed to start lessons at 5.5 because I had to know the letters of the alphabet.
And that was the incentive. and tell me, do you remember your first lessons? Do you remember your teacher?
Oh, clearly. Oh, very clearly. Yes, she was lovely. She was wonderful. She was like a second mother to me. And
what was her name?
Hazel Larson.
Yes.
And she was a very, very good teacher, especially as as a beginning years teacher. Do
you know anything about her background?
Well, I know that she herself only went as far as about what we would call grade 6, I suppose.
Yes.
That was all she had as her musical background.
And she taught you.
Yeah.
And here you are, all these years later, saying what a wonderful teacher she was.
But she never had children, so she really devoted her life to her piano teaching. And she was, she knew the difference between really musical playing and
functional.
Yeah, she wasn't just a functional teacher. She really taught you to express the music and think about what the music was about, and she used to talk about the composers, and so I was very, very fortunate because she was just the nearest music teacher to where I lived.
Isn't that amazing? And tell me, at what age did you start showing real promise and flair with playing the piano?
Well, I think she thought straight away.
Right.
Yeah,
yes.
Because by 7 she was lending me her Mozart sonatas to take home in the school holidays to sight read.
and that must have been such a wonderful thing to walk out of her house carrying that
I
music.
thought it was fantastic. I just was so happy about that. Now I look back, I suppose that was a bit unusual.
And did you do music exams?
Yes, she put me through the Trinity College exams. I used to deliberately sort of hold back. I didn't like having pieces for months and months. So if she started me on exam pieces, I was always a bit reluctant about getting into them too early.
You're pacing yourself.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and was there much music at your school? Was there singing?
Not really, but there was at high school because I went to the King Edward Technical College purely because of the music. It wasn't academically considered to be a good school at all, because the girls that went there just became shorthand typists and so forth, But they had a fantastic music scheme that started with, not Professor Galway, let me see.
Doesn't matter.
I'll have to think
It'll
about that. I mean, I know it as well as anything.
Yes, of course.
But they started an amazing music scheme there, which Frank Callaway continued.
Right.
And Frank Callaway always looked on me as one of his protégés.
Oh, really?
And when I went to that school at the age of 12, he put a piano concerto into the music festival program. They did a big 2 nights of concerts in the Dunedin Town Hall every year, and it was a really huge event.
Of course.
That we prepared for, and the whole school was the choir, and there were over 1,000 children at the school. So that was a really big thing, and I mean, I must have been a terrible headache for him, but anyway, I can remember at the age of 12 having to have the courage to move out of my seat amongst my friends in the choir and go down ready to come on and perform on the piano.
And do you remember which concerto it was?
Well, it was called, it was by Alec Rowley.
Right.
And
sounds like a work that's moved out of
a miniature concerto.
Right.
Yeah, it was a miniature concerto, and
was that with the school orchestra?
Yes, I think so. It might have been with the best of the King Edward Tech orchestras, which was a night school one.
Right.
Because they did music at night too. They had a ladies' choir and an orchestra.
And then did you go to do music at Otago University, or did you?
I did.
Yes.
Because everybody said I was too young to go to England.
Yes.
Though that was what I wanted more than anything.
And what age did you decide you wanted to go to England?
Oh, that was my dream all the way through.
Yes.
I don't know why. Probably what I heard and
Yes.
what people talked about was the big dream was going to England.
Yes.
And that was my goal always. So I wasn't too eager about going to university because performing the piano wasn't anything to do with a music degree in those days. And it was really a composition degree, I guess.
Okay. Yes.
So I was through my degree in 3 years, and it was supposed to be a 4-year degree. So I'll give you some idea of how I felt about it. I just wanted to get through it.
And how long after that then before you went to London?
I went straight away because
did you get a scholarship?
I was given a scholarship by the
Yes.
Royal Schools of Music.
Yes.
And it was supposed to start in September of the year I was finishing my university degree.
Mm.
So I arrived at Christmas time and had to start one term late.
Right. Okay. And tell me, what was it like finally arriving in London? Did you
Well, I
feel
loved it.
straight away?
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, I missed my parents, but I didn't grieve with homesickness the way some of the other people did when they came over from New Zealand, because it was what I'd always wanted to do.
And were there many other New Zealanders there at the time?
Quite a lot, really, but I didn't know them all. But I did manage to, after the first 3 months or so, I managed to move into a flat with 2 New Zealand girls who were they both owned grand pianos, which was absolutely brilliant. And they were both quite skilled on the piano and doing music and things, and so that was really good for me.
Mm.
And
And
they introduced me to other people.
Yes. And tell me about those lessons when you got to London. Was it just a new world for you?
It was. I mean, I very much needed it. I was really lacking, the kind of tuition I needed at that stage. And yes, it was an eye-opener to me, and it was really wonderful. And I had a professor called Frederick Jackson, who, he was like a sort of a grand pupil of Mate himself, and he was in a line of very fine teachers and musicians, and it was wonderful.
And just physically walking into the academy, you were at the academy.
Extraordinary.
It must have been just an amazing feeling.
Oh, it was incredible.
Yes.
And just so many people all doing music. It was.
But just physically walking through the door for the first time.
An incredible building. Yeah.
Yes. I spoke to a Turkish clarinet player at a masterclass at the Royal College in London.
Yes.
And I said to him, "What did it feel like as you walked up the steps?" And he said, "I was so happy. I screamed out aloud." And everyone in the room reacted like you did, because
Yes.
no one had ever asked him that before.
Yes, isn't it lovely?
So I wondered, it must have been the same for you coming from Dunedin.
Oh, there was. I mean,
Yes.
that was where I'd always dreamt I would go, somewhere like that, and it was an extraordinary place, and the names of people who were there at the same time as me, they pop up in
Yes,
things that I don't expect, like
yes,
on the radio or in movies, or
yes,
and you think, ooh, he was at the academy with me,
yes. That's wonderful. And you said you weren't homesick initially. How long before you came back to New Zealand?
Well, must have been the best part of 4 or 5 years. And in the end, I came back because I had 2 little children and a young husband who had dreadful mental problems, and
Right.
so I had to somehow survive. And so the best thing seemed to be to get on a plane and come home.
Right. And did you go back to Dunedin?
Yes, I did. Yes.
And how did you find Dunedin, having been away in the bright lights of London?
Well,
Was it good to be home?
it was just the same as it had ever been.
Yes.
But I had wonderful parents, who supported me and helped me get into a home and
Yes.
set up a teaching practice.
Yes.
That's how I started teaching.
And how long did you teach in Dunedin for?
Oh, I guess that was about 5 years before I moved to Christchurch.
Yes. Yes.
When I married Jim. So that was good, because people knowing me in Dunedin, I was given opportunities to do things that I probably wouldn't have been able to do anywhere else. And I started a class. I suggested doing this class, and because I thought it's what I would have loved when I was that age, when I was sort of high school age, in terms of composing, because composition was my second study at the Royal Academy of Music, and
Yes.
and I always regretted that when I used to bravely attempt to write music when I was little, that I had absolutely nobody to make any suggestions of any kind
Yes.
about
Yes.
what I might try next or how I might do it,
So you started a composition class
So I started we called it musicianship classes because I thought nobody would come if it was called composition. But that's what they were in effect. And it was run through the adult education, I think
Right.
it was called then.
Yes.
Don Mackenzie in Dunedin.
I remember Don Mackenzie.
Yeah, Don
Yes.
Mackenzie organised it. And the music department thought it was wonderful because it kind of gave young people in the last bit of high school the
Added skills they
the
needed.
skills they needed before they turned up in the university.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
yes, and I did say that the only prerequisite was grade 5 theory, so that they could actually notate
Yes.
music.
Yes. Oh, that's great.
And Christopher Norton came out of that.
Of course.
Amazing.
Absolutely. I know Christopher Norton well.
Yes, he's still a good friend of mine.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so you moved to Christchurch,
Yes.
and tell me about those early days in Christchurch.
Well, for the first year I was out at Redcliffe, so it wasn't exactly the best place to sort of start setting up a teaching practice, but within a year we'd moved into to the area near the university, and
Yes.
so from there that was a perfect place
In
for
Riccarton,
teaching.
yes.
Yes, that was in Totara Street. That was a perfect place to teach, and there were enough schools and university students could come, and that was great. So I had my piano, my grand piano from London. I was able to ship it home, and it was the beginning of a lifetime of teaching, which I didn't realise at the time.
If at that time you'd been told that that was what you're going to do, you probably wouldn't have been so impressed. But now looking back...
I wouldn't have liked it.
No. That's what I say to young students when they say, I don't want to teach.
Yes.
But actually catch them a few decades later and they've got a different view on it.
Yes, well, if you can combine it with performing, I think keeping your performing alive is very, very important.
Yes.
Because then the reality of what you're teaching...
It makes you humble too, doesn't it?
Yes.
Because
it's
so hard to walk out and play anything, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
Keeps you in touch with the reality of the difficulties. But, yes, I thought I would teach a lot, take on lots of pupils, and then I might be able to afford to stop.
That's very good logic.
But it never happened. I was still teaching at the age of 80, Mark.
Yes.
So
yes. And when you were 80 and you were teaching, you were still loving it.
Oh, absolutely. And by then you've honed so many skills.
Yes.
Because you've had all that experience.
Yes.
Of how to do it.
And I know the answer to this one, or since I'm in New Zealand, the answer to this one, that the students that you were teaching at the age of 80 would have viewed you as the same way as when you were a young teacher.
Yes, I think so.
And that's a wonderful thing,
yes.
If you're an 80-year-old, to have that same rapport with the generations and generations, later.
It is. I mean, it's actually a privilege to have young people coming into your life when you're an older person, because so many people are just doing nothing very meaningful by that stage of their life.
Yes.
And for me it was just wonderful to still be doing something useful, and the fact that people even still wanted to come for piano lessons to me at that age.
Yes.
Was
it's a very special thing in music lesson, because you talk about Hazel, your first teacher.
Yes.
As though it happened just yesterday. Because in your mind it did, didn't it?
Yes.
Really?
Oh yes, it's very fresh. It's very fresh. All the detail of where she lived and what she taught me, and just her whole, yes, I just knew her so well, and she always called me her little flower.
Oh.
I think I was a bit special.
Yes, I'm sure you were. I'm sure you were. And tell me, practicing, were you a person who enjoyed practicing?
Yes.
Because not everyone does.
No, I know that. I realise that. That's one of the great skills of teaching.
Yes.
Finding the music that kindles the desire to practice it, and how to practice it so that it's effective.
Yes.
Reasonably quickly. You're not feeling this is something you've got to spend hours and hours and hours.
So if you were in a physical state this afternoon to practice a piece of music, what would it be?
Oh,
what would you like to take off your shelf and relive those memories? Too many things to choose.
I know too much music.
Yes.
I couldn't pinpoint one. It might be something like the Goldberg variations of Bach. Yeah.
Yes.
Which I never really learnt properly. You know, that's what I would probably feel like doing, something fresh.
I think we are very lucky people to be music teachers.
Oh. I think it's an amazing vocation, because you form such a special relationship with your students. It's such a wonderful thing to be teaching one-to-one, isn't it?
It is an incredible.
And you do get to know them.
And the parents.
So well as people through their music.
Yes.
And the parents, yes, some wonderful parents. Oh, it's very special. It's really quite a privilege compared with classroom teaching. It's so different.
That's right.
So different.
Yes. Yeah. Well, Rosemary, thank you so much for sharing that with me.
Oh, that's been a pleasure. You asked the right questions.
You had all the right answers. Thank you so much, Rosemary.
I'm trying to think who set up that.